listeners, it's your host, Dacia. So you are about to hear our most Gilmore Girls-esque episode to date, in that it is filled with rapid-fire cultural referencing conversation. Travis Andrews and Andy Meyerson of the Living Earth Show are going to introduce you to something called electro-chamber music, which is what happens when you cross rock instruments, classical music, and like a howler monkey or something like that. I love these guys, and I think that you will too. And you know who else is going to like it? Lars Ulrich of Metallica. Just wait and see. Also, remember to subscribe to, rate us, and review us on iTunes, or else sleep with one eye open. Okay, enjoy the episode if you dare. My name is Dacia Clay. I'm the audio librarian here at Classical 91.7. While I'm a real librarian, I have a deep, dark secret. I know very little about classical music. I grew up listening to rock, and I know something about jazz. But when it comes to classical, but I really want to learn. So, every week on this show, a classical music expert will give me a piece of classical music they think I should know, and then we'll discuss it. Come learn with me in the classical classroom. Hello everyone and welcome to the Classical Classroom. I'm Dacia Clay, and here with me all the way from the KQED studios in San Francisco are Travis Andrews and Andy Meyerson of the Living Earth Show. They are a new music initiative which is based in the Bay Area. They play electro-acoustic chamber music, which we're going to find out more about today. Travis is an electric guitarist and Andy is a percussionist, and together they commission and promote composers, and they've performed at universities and conservatories across the U.S. They've also been featured artists at festivals such as Spoleto and the Tribeca New Music Festival. Guys, welcome to the Classical Classroom.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that you're going to be teaching me about electro-acoustic chamber music today.
We're going to try.
Okay.
There's a lot of, heads to our beast.
What is this? What is electro-acoustic chamber music?
Electro-acoustic chamber music is just a great catch-all for what we do. We play chamber music. Andy's an acoustic instrument, typically, as a percussionist, and I kind of fell into playing exclusively electric guitar in this group. So I'm electro, he's acoustic. But there is a tradition to it, too.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. That was one of my first questions is, did you make this up? And if not, when did this genre come to be?
I get asked that so much. Did you make this up?
The answer is usually yes.
It is.
This is Andy. So I think the way we have described what we do is kind of classical music on the wrong instruments. Mm-hmm. Or like if Kronos Quartet and the White Stripes had a weird illegitimate child is what we would sort of sound like. And I think we came to what we do relatively similarly. In middle school, I heard the Green Day album Dookie and just wanted to be Trey Cool. I wanted to be in that band.
Yeah.
And was fortunate enough to have teachers that kind of pushed me to listen to other things and eventually find the weirder side of classical music, because that was the thing that was pushing the instrument to the weirdest places, and that was where I kind of had the most fun. But everything I did stemmed from the roots of playing rock music on a drum kit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Travis, it's similar for you, right?
Oh, yeah. I think I'm saddled with it like even worse because, I had the, pedigree with the whole classical guitar thing, but then was also blessed with the dark heart of a stand-up comedian. But the problem is that I'm not funny at all.
I was wondering why I wasn't laughing.
Exactly, I know. So then, just really had this desire. I went through like a public school that was really jazz-focused, and then really enjoyed that, and, was kind of in my prime during the height of rap metal, and had that whole thing going down. And then just as I went through school, I kind of discovered like other things that were like kind of challenging, and then were selfishly awesome, was to do the classical thing. But then always kind of wanted to stick it to people a little bit, and one way to do that was playing experimental music. It seemed like the ultimate way to make a game out of playing music.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, I think, like how we wound up doing what we do, and both being committed to doing, instead of electroacoustic chamber music, I think a lot of the time we prefer to talk about it as just being experimental.
Okay.
But I mean, electroacoustic chamber music, I mean, I think that like Mario Davidovsky is like a really good example of that, where you're playing like with a tape. And then I think also, you could probably connect that back to musique concrète.
Wait, what? Musique concrète? Please define.
Musique concrète, I think that Boulez is a great champion of this, where it was, and this is something that kind of goes back to, 50s and 60s, about just, taking recordings of really pedestrian sounds and chopping them up and then making music out of it, or organizing thoughts and sound, which has a lot of resonance for us. I mean, some of the stuff that we wanted to just talk about today, putting the lens on what we do, uses field recordings and really challenges the notion of what music is. And a lot of times, for us, really challenges the audience.
Yes.
I feel like we should hear an example, because I'm imagining a lot of different things. I mean, there are tons of music that we hear now, we're really accustomed to hearing samples in music. That's like a pretty done thing. But you're talking about music that was made in the 50s and 60s, where they were sampling from, I guess, sound around them and including that in their music. I would love to hear an example of what you guys are talking about.
Sure. Well, I'll set this one up. So basically, what we do, we come from sort of a weird place as outsiders in the classical tradition, because there's not really a big history of classical music for drum set, right? Beethoven and Mozart never wrote for a drum kit or an electric guitar. So everything we play is composed for us by composers who would otherwise write for symphonies and string quartets. And what they have to do is grapple with the fact that the tradition of our instruments is one that's rooted in popular music and oral traditions, rather than a written, notated tradition of, say, a classical violinist. So they kind of go to a couple different places when people write for us. One is that kind of early experimental electronic music that Travis was talking about. And another area is using the actual vernacular of pop music and the traditions from which, say, the drum set came from, to write a piece of classical music in either a minimalist style or a particularly complex style that combines a lot of these weird influences to make something that really fits nowhere but encompasses everything. So
that's actually a really good way to put it, because for the legs of what we do have a lot of stuff that, dialogues with minimalism, because I think that's been done, at least with the instruments that Andy and I play, is to just have that, composer-performer thing with rock instruments. And Andy and I are painfully aware of the fact that has been done. But then there's also the opposite movement that Andy and I do, which is kind of a response to minimalism.
So let's
just new complexity.
Well, let's play the Nicole Lizé piece.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's got both.
Yeah. So we can play this clip and then talk about what it is. But
okay.
It's a good example of a lot of what we do.
Sounds good.
Michael, row your boat ashore, hallelujah. Michael, row your boat ashore, hallelujah. Sister,
so this sounds like Michael, row your boat ashore, but there's definitely something else going on here. So talk about what that is.
Well, there's a couple things that I have. So if you can listen to, I'm playing a couple different instruments. One is little glockenspiel, that's the bells you hear. I'm hitting another guitar. I'm hitting an acoustic guitar with a mallet. And then the bass drum is probably the most maddeningly difficult thing I've played in a really long time. It's, those weird kind of opulent rock drum sets of the 80s that had two kick drums?
Yes.
The double bass thing?
Yeah, like Neil Peart.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Nicole Lizé wrote this piece for, when I play it, I have to do that exact same thing with two kick drums, like the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. There's always a bass drum going that's maddeningly difficult, particularly when you have to sing Michael, row your boat ashore over top of it. So, I mean, she took very literally the traditions that we use of strumming a guitar around a campfire, playing in a weird heavy metal band and, playing in Rush, and really squished those two things together because as both guitarists and percussionists, we're sort of expected to do all of it. And so because she can write for all of it, she just made us do 1,000 things at once. And under the guise of maybe one of the simplest campfire songs you can imagine. So
Interesting.
It's that winning formula of high and low, isn't it? Yeah, which is great. It could be, oh yeah, you can do that and sing.
So you guys are singing here while you are playing your instruments.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But it sounds like you've got like a sort of maybe some other people with you also singing.
Well,
Or
in
is
the
it just
recording,
a-
it's just a lot of us. So this is from the recorded version. It's going to be part of the album that's coming out next year. And we just multi-tracked it a lot. So it's
Yeah.
a lot of Cookie Monster voice, a lot of falsetto voice, just because
Muppet Choir.
with a piece like that, the more fun the person is having on stage, the more fun it is for the audience. And that can be anything as dense and complex as Fernie Ho, or as something that on the surface might be a bit silly like this. This is for everything that I try to play. Like either, yeah, if everyone's having fun, then it wins.
Yeah.
And
How did you guys kind of come to? I'm really interested in what you do. Seems very unique, and maybe there are other people out there doing this that I just don't know about. But I haven't heard about it. But so you guys come with these traditionally rock music instruments. You come together, and you're like, no, we're going to commission composers, and we're going to approach this from a classical music sort of aesthetic. Why did that's a really big question, but why did you choose? I mean, you kind of explained this a little bit, but when you were talking about how you had people in your life that were pushing you to explore some more fringy elements of classical music.
well,
But what made you decide to commission people as opposed to, say, composing your own music?
That's awesome question. So Andy and I have a number of different projects, like where we do our own music, but we just like get so sick of ourselves. So an important. So and it's great too. I mean, this is the healthiest thing in my life, and also like at times like the most difficult and stressful, and certainly the most time consuming. But Andy and I really believe in collaboration.
I think one of the coolest things we can do as musicians is to be a canvas for other people, for people who we think are doing really cool work, and almost take ourselves out of it as people. And one of the really nice things about what we do, like that piece was written by a wonderful composer, Nicole Lizet. I mean, she wrote for the San Francisco Symphony last year, and it was amazing. And one of the really nice things that I think draws composers to what we do is there's a freedom from the classical context when writing for our instruments. There's no tradition of writing for drum kit and vocals and, grandpa's acoustic guitar. So what we, I think, give to composers, and what we're really excited to put into the world and to leave, to have exist, is these works by people we're really inspired by, who are writing music that we certainly couldn't write ourselves, and that deserves to be heard on a larger scale. Just give them another different canvas.
It sounds like this sort of electro-acoustic chamber music that you guys are doing is both providing composers with the opportunity to do something really creative and different outside of their norm, and it's providing you, perhaps, as performers, with the ability to do something outside of your norm and to really challenge and up your game as musicians.
Absolutely. And for us, I know that when we get a new piece and then when we're deep in it, we're totally transported. And then we really believe that like other people are too. And that's an addictive experience.
Well, let's hear some more of the music. What's another piece that you guys have brought today that we should hear?
Ooh, I want to do the Pfeffer.
Okay.
I like that.
So set it up for us.
Okay, this is a piece by John Pfeffer called "The Bell, the Ball, the Bow Tie, and the Boot."
Okay.
And those, for people not in the know, are the shapes that chicken McNuggets come in. Huh. And like John is like such an interesting composer where, we've done a couple revisions of this piece, and then a lot of the experience that we had in the studio informed the composition. So we had this crazy back and forth of just experimenting with noise, and the piece kind of revealed itself like kind of having gone through, maybe a season of performances and then recording it and then editing it and then taking it apart and putting it back together again. But for me, this is like one of my favorite experiments that we've had as a group, because like we could have never come up with this individually, but it was something that really benefited from what Andy and I are capable of doing technically, with like a really strong initial idea, and then just a lot of like luck and circumstance.
Yeah. Well, let's hear it. So is that guitar we're hearing?
Yeah, it's guitar and then AOL, I think.
He sampled the email startup, right?
Yeah, like the dial-up noise,
Yeah.
which blends really nicely.
Let's talk about what's going on in the music here.
Well, this is actually a great place to talk about samples. So, some of the samples like actually didn't happen until like just after we'd done the piece. I mean, they were like post-production. Mm-hmm. But there were ones that we did use in the studio, and we wound up getting all these crossed lines because he specified this very particular type of guitar that has these like humongous pickups from the 60s. They get all this like crazy high frequency interference. And then we kind of cued off of that and then just did like some timbral blending with like that AOL sample, which is crazy. Boiling water makes a notable appearance. And then just garbled talking. Which is, I mean, like, what's so cool about it to me is that it just uses, like, techniques that are just the most idiomatic thing in the world. I mean, it sounds like this Rage Against the Machine song, You're the Boomerang. It's this pedal, and then you run your guitar through it, and then you just hit the back of your neck.
Yeah.
And then
The guitar neck, not
the guitar neck, not my neck.
That's good. This piece, I wouldn't call it and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I often am. But I wouldn't call it music. It's more like audible art, and I don't know
think
where that
neither
line is
would-
drawn. You know?
I like that, and I think that's what we're all about. Anyway, I think that the recording engineer would probably agree with you too. I mean, it was a long day of recording. We did it in one day, and the guy was like, "It sounds like my washing machine." But that's what we're here to inspect. We inspect the line between washing machine and art.
Yeah.
Because who else is going to do it?
And what do you find at that intersection? Like what?
I've
A lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
amazing stuff. I think honestly, the difference is exclusively in the listener. It's how you. It's the whole point for me of things like that is it gets someone like if you listen to it really, really closely, then you can find really beautiful sounds anywhere, and you can organize them in really fun. Like you can hear the world a very different way. It's almost like the way I describe something like that would be kind of like hiking with your ears. There's no context to those sounds. There's no like you don't expect like a tonic dominant relationship. There's no like, oh, this is in minor, this is sad. There's none of that musical context. So you're just exploring these sonic objects, which can be as beautiful as anything else. And they can also be evocative of very specific things. Like a piece like that, it's really easy to make contextual connections with the weird sounds you're hearing. And you can really do whatever you want with those. So I think, yeah, I would consider that as musical as anything else we play.
Okay.
And a lot of that is just in the presentation and how it's listened to, which is really our job, is to get people to hear more things like music.
So okay, and so you're saying that part of what you do is you're also challenging your listeners to learn how to listen in a new way to sounds that they might not
Yeah.
otherwise pay attention to. But the way that you're
Absolutely,
framing it
yeah.
kind of takes them to that place.
Yep.
Something
I
like
think that's
that.
been a very fortunate byproduct. I think that's
Yeah.
a really, really good way to put it. I mean, I think that like what I like about that and what I really like about that piece in particular, like kind of as a recording as opposed to a live performance. The live performances are great because they're always different. And imagine this, that was actually commissioned as part of a evening length show with dance. We work with this great company in San Francisco called Post Ballet, and that piece is entirely choreographed.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That's
which is
awesome.
it's awesome.
As was the piece before it. They're both for the same show.
Okay.
And
Out of left field, dropping another layer.
yeah, well, it's really interesting to see when the sound of boiling water is choreographed by a ballet company. You listen to the sound of boiling water entirely differently, and it becomes music just because it has to. And that's really the coolest thing I think we can do is make that experience more open to or more available to whoever happens to be within earshot.
Yeah. Yeah. If you could give me an example of a traditional classical music composer, or maybe not traditional, but a classical music composer who has some influence on you that you sort of draw creative inspiration from that maybe is connected to what you guys do.
They exist, I promise.
I believe you.
Why is that so hard to answer?
I mean, it doesn't have to be a direct connection. It can just be like a sort of theoretical connection. I'm just curious about like what composers, just kind of your creative journey to this point, who started in classical music driving you there.
I have a lot. John Luther Adams is a really big one for me.
Okay.
I don't know if you're much familiar with his work.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had him on. He
Lucky.
talked about
That's cool.
Become Ocean.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
God, what a piece.
I know.
But he's a composer who actually does something extraordinarily similar to, or he succeeds in the thing that we try to do that we were just talking about, of making people hear the world in a completely different way. There's the piece in Nuxuit is one of the most successful examples of that I've ever heard. It's the piece that he wrote it's outside for 9 to 99 percussionists. It has to be performed outside, and the circle of musicians gets farther and farther apart, and then it really blends into the environment in every literal and figurative way.
Wow.
And it really inflicts that idea on the listener in a way that I think is super powerful. And
Inflicts.
yeah, well,
That's an interesting
totally
choice
does.
of word.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We use a lot of violent descriptors.
Well, but I think things like that, I don't know. It's generally not what people would come to a concert hall to do, but I think if they knew that was an option, they would. Or
you know,
in retrospect.
You know what's funny to me? Yeah, it's too, because I know that you love JLA.
I do.
And then like I have like kind of like traditional metal guy answers. Like I'm like, oh, I love, Hinastera. You know, and I love Shostakovich, so heavy, and Stravinsky, like Rite of Spring, yeah, it's primitive.
I love how you're like, yeah, all heavy metal guitar guys say this.
They do.
None of them say
like
this.
There's this, no, they do. There's like totally this like kind of meathead frat thing that I totally perpetuate. Like this, and I know that, but it's just like, in what we do, we're so into our composers. It's just like when we're working on a project or working with somebody, and usually when we're in the situation where we like kind of have like found someone to stalk that writes music that we love, and then chase them down, and then like over the course of months, maybe talk them into doing something with us against their better judgment. It's just like there's like nothing else in the world but that composer. So I just get like kind of so lost in just like in our contemporaries that I just lose track of the tradition.
Yeah,
which is sometimes by design, because like this stuff can get like so ivory tower and just like so removed, and I hate it when people come up and say, oh, I'm just not smart enough, or like, oh, I don't get it. And then that's just like, to me, we didn't do our job. So again, touching back on this, like mixing the high and the low, I think that when Andy and I are like interpreting music, and we'll hear something, and instead of like trying to make what we're playing some allusion to like a canonized classical music work, we'll be like, oh, this sounds like Lars Ulrich, like on his drum kit, falling down a flight of stairs. Like,
of
oh,
Metallica.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and totally just like get inspired by the sound of, that guy who can't play to begin with, just tumbling down some stairs, just like swatting at drums.
Oh,
And
wait a minute. Did you just say that Lars can't play?
Oh my God. He's not. Yes.
Well, I love him. But like, I absolutely love him because, he's just like a little, I think he's clean now, but this just little ball of cocaine energy, and he is adorable, and he has more money than God, and like I love him. Like I love him. I love listening to him play, because there's something that is really important to like people that play technically demanding music.
Yeah,
is when it sounds easy, like when I watch like Steve Vai or like Greg Koch or something like play guitar, and then they just make it look so easy because they're so good. I'm just bored out of my mind. But there's like something so special about someone like playing at like the very limit, or maybe a little bit past the very limit of their technical ability, that is so magic. And nobody is more emblematic of that than Lars Ulrich.
That was beautifully said.
Thank you.
My favorite part was little coked up bundle of it.
Yeah,
I know.
And then when he got clean, it's just
he's-
all the beats got noticeably slower.
Yeah, I know. It's just like the original Garage Days EP.
Yeah,
like that. He just like had he just like had his cocktail right. And he was awesome, because he was just like you knew that like he felt like, oh my God, I'm playing beyond my ability.
Right.
And then that's like, to me as a listener, like that's kind of what I want my life to be like all the time. And I don't want to have the same cocktail, but like I still want to have that like kind of mental energy, which is why the new complexity stuff for us is like so great.
So basically what you're going for is a drug-induced state sans drugs.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I think
that's
that
part of it.
There's that. I think there is a psychedelic element.
Yes.
There is a
Yeah.
psychedelic element to the whole thing that we would love to infuse the music that we do with, but then there's also this, very like
Human?
Werner Herzog, human struggle.
Yeah,
dire. Like, really dire.
Yeah, for Lars,
on.
I think a lot of it was, it's like you can hear him struggling so hard in any of those records.
I don't know though, because some of them are edited pretty hard, and then they just like kind of disintegrated into hard rock. But it's just like the going for it. It's just the going for
Yeah,
it.
it's not the
Right.
drugs. It's just that was clearly what it took for him to go for it.
Exactly.
Right.
And so you can go for it for a lot of different reasons.
Right, and
but-
then everybody has heard those records, so like you can always like kind of use him as an illusion, and then people kind of get it. They get like what you're going for, just because he's everywhere. He was everywhere.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, I'm still
Oh my
living like
gosh.
it's 1992, but it's not.
So just to steer us a little bit back to classical music, though I have I could talk about this all day. When Travis, I met you at a Dallas Symphony remix concert, which I've mentioned to the listeners of our show before.
Yeah.
It was a great show. But I remember at that show, and you were actually playing with Bryce Dessner, who people know from The National, who's also been on this show. You were actually sitting in the orchestra, both of you playing electric guitar. And I learned at that show, and I can't remember if it was in a conversation or something I was reading in the notes, but that electric guitar and classical music have kind of a troubled history together. Like that composers have tried in the past to meld those things and haven't been super successful.
Mm-hmm.
How is that changing, and are you changing it, and how? Like,
Well,
are you because it seems like kind of part of what you're doing is making new instruments more acceptable in the classical music world.
Yeah, by the way, that was really fun, and I can't say enough good things about DSO. I mean, that was like one of the most fun, series of performances like I've ever done. But there was this one moment, I think it was in the second show. It was in the first half of the program, and then like slowly, this beer bottle rolled from the back of the audience to the front of the stage.
I remember that.
And everybody was cool with it. Like, the orchestra thought it was funny. Like, Brett didn't storm off the podium or anything. And,
right.
The audience was totally delighting in this moment. So I think that was crucial, I think, in just the acceptance of, I think, everything that was happening on that show. Is
right,
that
because
there were willing participants.
Just to explain a little bit, at these Dallas Symphony remix concerts, you can bring your drinks into the performance as general admission. It's very sort of laid back, and that works really well to create this great energy and bring new people to music. I was really impressed by it. But maybe having glass bottles of beer wasn't the best idea, because I think that actually happened a couple of times during the performance.
It's awesome,
that somebody
though. I mean,
dropped it. But yeah, everybody just sort of
it's
rolled
delightful.
with it. Yeah.
It's delightful, and and Bryce is unique in that he does speak both of those languages. He's a great orchestral writer, and he's a great guitarist, and then he has his own voice. He has a dual life. And he's great at it, and he's particularly great at bringing new audiences, because his language is really attractive. And I think what Andy and I are kind of, don't kill me. We're kind of we don't do that. We're kind of enemies of that. Because when I see guitar show up in the electric guitar in particular, show up in the chamber orchestra, I just think that it's just an agent of evil. Is that this will really bring them in the door?
So here you are an electric guitarist who is in the classical music world. You're definitely playing in that tradition, but you're saying that it's an instrument of evil when put together with other orchestral instruments.
There's a tremendous amount of self-loathing in what we do.
There is.
That's really essential.
I know. It's just really right in the center there. But it's just, it's. Yeah, I think that I'm skeptical of it. I have to be skeptical of it, otherwise I'm a turd. If I just think that oh sweet, I'm part of the orchestra now, I'm awesome. That's what everybody thinks, I think. And I know that especially with that piece, you walk out on stage and then you're holding the electric guitar, and then everybody's oh turd. But I think that you have to be really like critical of that.
Well, and just I want to get a little more into what you mean by turd, because what I think that you mean by turd is that they're looking at you. You're a dude who has long hair. You have an electric guitar, and so they probably make this connection in their minds immediately that, oh, this guy is from a rock band, and look at that, isn't it cute that he's sitting with the orchestra?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Is that what you mean? Okay.
That's exactly what I mean. And I think that there is another technical element to it, is that like when you play with frets, like compared to, a stringed instrument like a violin or a viola or a cello, guitar is really just bumper bowling, because I never worry about intonation. And that's like all they worry about. I think it's like I sit down and then like if I'm out of tune, I'm like, oh, this guitar sucks. But like, when you're a string player, it's just like, you have to have an ear, and like this discipline goes back, and then so far, and that like I've been playing since I was like 3 years old to be able to do this at the level that I'm doing it at. And then this guy probably picked it up when he was like 14, slamming Pringles and rubbing Stridex pads on his face, and then we're on stage together and he's in front of me.
This is your perception of other people's
This is my perception, yes.
of you. Okay.
I don't think it's unfounded.
Well, yeah. So clearly, I think the classical music community has a difficult time with electric instruments, and what you're saying to me is that you don't care.
I think that this is like kind of a really fun part about what Andy and I do is this like, it's weird, and it's kind of weird to have people like get into your project or like your music project if it's just like, we don't write our stuff. Someone else writes it and then we play it. And then a lot of people that I, kind of see that do this thing, that does have a dialogue with classical music or, that hierarchy of like collaborating with a composer and then having to find a presenter and this type of thing. Like, I think that people want it to be a job.
Right.
But like, I think that, if anything, we kind of like assert ourselves too much, like over everything we do. It's just like we kind of like choose things that we think are going to be difficult and challenging to put in front of people. And we might say, oh, we chose it because, no one else is going to do it. And this is our niche and stuff like that. But really, I think that this is a public service that we do. And I think that like by being really critical and by choosing things that are difficult, this is really important to Andy and I socially to like move the bar forward, and then I think like kind of a part of that is just like is being like really self-aware that there are these failures and that nothing that we do is safe, and like right until the moment of like downbeat of when we do like a new piece, which will be like 3 times in the next 2 weeks.
Yeesh.
Don't know, just don't know if it's gonna work.
Yeah.
And then I think just like kind of having that attitude about it is the healthiest thing we can do.
Well, we've got just time to hear just a little bit of one more piece before we have to wrap it up.
Sorry.
So what should we go out on? Give it a little setup, and I'd love to hear something else.
Want to do Anna maybe?
I was thinking Anna. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So Anna's another piece from this show we're doing with Post Ballet called Doobie. And this piece by this lovely Scottish composer, Anna Meredith. And it's totally like a dance piece.
Well, so she, I think a lot like Bryce, has hands in a lot of different worlds. She writes for symphonies, but she also has her own solo. I think it's just down, up the middle pop music project. It's electronic pop music, and it's meant to be danced to. I guess going back a little bit, it's hard for electric guitar and drum set to exist in a classical context sometimes because composers don't have as much of a familiarity with those things. They're not really studied in conservatories. They don't know how to play them. But someone like Bryce or someone like Anna can come along with such a working knowledge as performers as well as composers and can do these really cool mixtures of the two. And so, that's this piece. Okay. It's called Tassel.
Let's give it a listen. This sounds almost like cartoon music.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, or like J-pop.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
She has a real way with synthesizers and programmed a lot of them into this piece.
I like it. It's really different from the other stuff. But not that I didn't like the other stuff, but it's like they've all been very different from each other, I guess is what I'm saying. Well, Travis Andrews and Andy Meyerson of the Living Earth Show, thank you so much for being on the Classical Classroom. This has been a really fun discussion, And Lars Ulrich is going to be really happy about it.
I love
I don't
him.
know. Yeah, he's great.
I love unironically.
It's a little bit of irony in it for me.
Guys, seriously, thank you. I appreciate
No,
your
thank
time.
you.
All right, everybody, that does it for this episode of Classical Classroom. For more Classroom, go to houstonpublicmedia.org/classroom, and there you can find links to all of the ways to listen to us and links to all of our social media, now including, but not limited to, Snapchat. If you listen to us on iTunes, by the way, make sure to subscribe to us and to rate us and review us, because it's awesome. Thanks today to audio producer Stevie Ray Todd Holslander for making us sound nice. Thanks to editor Mark DeClaudio for his piercing wah-wah eyes. Thanks to Travis Andrews and Andy Meyerson for being here today. Thanks to me for saying words. But most of all, thanks to you for listening. We'll catch you next time.